Welcome to the Backyard Professor podcast series. I'm recording live in my little log cabin in the Rocky Mountains of Idaho. I'm Kerry Schertz, the Backyard Professor. This podcast is in conjunction with my last podcast on quantum physics and the revelations of Joseph Smith, where I focused on section 88 in the Doctrine and Covenants, and I discussed some of the what I consider seriously significant religious and philosophical symbolisms of the medieval tarot cards. My whole purpose of studying quantum physics in the first place, and turning around and sharing it with you, my listeners, is to drive us to our knees in abject humility. It is to cause us to pause before judging others based upon their views of life, of truth, of reality, as being erroneous or incorrect, while we believe our version of reality is true, accurate, right, just, and the way it really is. Quantum physics does, if nothing else, what it does is it forces us to review what we consider to be reality. Physical, spiritual, psychological, and otherwise. It's a call to arms to lay down our arms, our weapons of death and war and destruction. Gain a little humility and love for one another, and start working together in a teamwork and a cooperation as a whole of humanity together to elevate and raise our spirituality, not through forcefully converting others to our point of view at the point of the sword or face death, but with the idea that we will ever spiral upward in greater understanding and appreciation that everyone's point of view is seriously purposeful for them in their own culture. And we have to begin to recognize that, to show respect for that, and yet be willing to teach our view and learn their view. We all can learn from each other. I believe the basis of getting this message can very well come from the study of quantum physics and quantum mechanics, so I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try. What I want to do in this podcast is present several different views from scientists, philosophers, science popular writers, physicists, etc., and just give bits and pieces of the weird enigma, the spookiness, the utter incredible new paradigm that quantum physics is offering us, and that as a general rule, orthodox scientists won't touch. And so it's up to the layman, it's up to the amateur to explore the various parameters of potentia, as quantum physics describes. So let me get on with this. A nifty little book by David Bohm, the great physicist, and F. David Peat, a very good science writer, called Science, Order, and Creativity. They're discussing, this is a, let me get the date here real quick for you. This is Bantam Books, it's in paperback, 1987. I believe I saw a reprint of it just recently. On page 56, they note the essential activity of science consists of thought, which arises in creative perception and is expressed through play. This gives rise to a process in which thought unfolds into provisional knowledge, which then moves outward into action, and it returns again as fresh perception and knowledge. This process leads to a continuous adaptation of knowledge which undergoes constant growth, transformation, and extension. Knowledge is therefore not something rigid and fixed that accumulates indefinitely in a steady way, but it is a continual process of change. Knowledge is change. Very interesting there. Its growth is closer to that of an organism than a data bank. When serious contradictions in knowledge are encountered, it is necessary to return to creative perception and free play. These act to transform our existing knowledge. Knowledge apart from this cycle of activity has no meaning. The fact that this knowledge can bring order to experience and even correctly predict new kinds of experience shows that it must in some way be directly related to a reality beyond this knowledge alone. On the other hand, no form of knowledge can be absolutely fixed and apply indefinitely. This means that any search for such absolute fixed knowledge is illusory, since all knowledge arises out of the shifting, changing activity of creative perception, free play, unfoldment into action, and its return as experience. They note further on page 66 and 67, all forms of perception, both through the senses and through the mind, involve a cyclic form of activity. Incoming information is apprehended by the mind, and in turn produces an outgoing activity in which further scanning and information gathering take place in order to confirm and to explore and to reinforce what has already been seen. Well, this new activity gathers additional information, which is again apprehended by the mind, leading to yet more outgoing activity. Well, this is the process, very similar to what happens in science as well. Knowledge of reality does not therefore lie in the subject, nor in the object, but in the dynamic flow between them. However, since reality itself is inexhaustible and never fully covered by knowledge, it could also be said to lie outside the subject, while at the same time including this overall cyclic activity. It's a fascinating way to look at the process of discovery, as it were, showing that we can never know enough or know it all. David Bohm, in his book Wholeness and the Implicate Order, this text is from Routledge Press, the reissue published in 1995. It was originally published in 1980. Bohm's powerful in this book. He says on page 9, "The quantum theory shows that the attempt to describe and follow an atomic particle in precise detail has little meaning. In the more detailed description, the atom is in many ways seen to behave as much like a wave as a particle. It can perhaps best be regarded as a poorly defined cloud, dependent for its particular form on the whole environment, including the observing instrument. Us, in other words. Well, thus one can no longer maintain the division between the observer and the observed, and this is very important. Rather, both the observer and observed are merging and interpenetrating aspects of one whole reality, which is indivisible and unanalyzable. Relativity leads us to a way of looking at the world that is similar to the above in certain key respects. From the fact that in Einstein's point of view no signal faster than light is possible, it follows that the concept of a rigid body breaks down. But this concept is crucial in the classical atomic theory, for in this theory the ultimate constituents of the universe, they have to be small indivisible objects, and this is only possible if each part of such an object is bound rigidly to all of the other parts. What is needed in a relativistic theory is to give up altogether the notion that the world is constituted of basic objects or building blocks. Rather, one has to view the world in terms of universal flux of events and processes. In other words, the only thing constant is change. In essence, is what he's saying. On page 11, relativity and quantum theory agree in that they both imply the need to look on the world as an undivided whole, in which all the parts of the universe, including the observer and his instruments, merge and unite in one totality. He doesn't mean that mystically, he means that literally, which is very mystical. I know, it sounds contradictory, but he'll describe this. The new form of insight can